Hello everyone, I am Vishnu Karthik from Tagore Medical College. Today we are going to see about one of the important topics, that is the kidney. Kidney has a very major role in our body, and it is also a frequently asked university question and also in viva aspect. So in this session we are going to see about introduction, location, external features, relations, capsule, macroscopic and microscopic structures, blood supply, nerve supply, lymphatics, and embryology, as well as its clinical correlation. First, what are kidneys? Kidneys are bean-shaped organs which are located on the posterior abdominal wall. So it is the most posteriorly located organs in our body, that is in the abdominal cavity. They are also retroperitoneal organs just situated behind the peritoneum, just anterior to that of the posterior abdominal wall. They are reddish brown in color and they are the major excretory organs. Also, they maintain salt and water balance of the body and also maintain the pH. And similarly, it has many secretory functions such as secretion of erythropoietin, renin. So, kidney has a major role to play. Let's see about its location. As we already said, kidney is located on the posterior abdominal wall, just anterior to that of the posterior abdominal wall. Okay, then there are slight differences between the arrangement of the right and left kidney. Okay, um, so we can see that the right kidney is slightly lower than that of the left kidney. Why is it? Because on the right side we have the liver, which is a bigger organ, so it pushes right kidney slightly downwards. Also, we can see that the left kidney is slightly nearer to that of the median plane. Why is this so? Because we have the most lateral aspect on the left side of the body, we have the spleen. So that spleen occupies some space so that the left kidney is slightly nearer to that of the median plane. Median plane is that of the center. Okay, their long axes are slightly oblique. That is, see here, usually when there is a straight long axis, it will be like this, but kidneys have the long axis as slightly in this manner. As a result, we have the apex. See, this is the apex. We have the apex close to that of the median plane, while the base away from that of the median plane. Okay, so we can find the apex just 2.5 centimeter from the median plane, and the hilum at 5 centimeter, and the lower pole at 7.5 centimeter. So this is the oblique axis of the kidney. Okay, then they usually move with respiration to some centimeters due to the increase of the abdominal pressure and decrease of the abdominal pressure. Then the transpyloric plane, since they are arranged slightly upwards and downwards, transpyloric plane here passes through the upper part of the hilum of right kidney. See here, this is the right kidney. Its hilum. Hilum is the area that we will discuss later. Just at this transpyloric plane passes just above the hilum of the right kidney, while it passes along the lower part of the hilum of the left kidney. Okay, just remember this. That's about the location. Next we move on to the external features. Kidney has two poles, two surfaces, two borders, and a hilum. Let's see each and everything in detail. First, let's see about the poles. We have one upper pole and a lower pole. Okay. The upper pole is thick and round and present nearer to the median plane than that of the lower pole, because the axis is oblique in nature. Then the upper pole is just related to that of the suprarenal gland. From its name itself, we can identify that it is present just above the kidney. They are nothing but the adrenal glands. Then lower pole, which is thin and pointed, it is above the iliac crest, about a distance of 2.5 centimeter. So this is an important surface marking. Next we move on to surfaces. We have one anterior surface and one posterior surface. Posterior surface is present behind this. So we have this. Anterior surface faces anterolaterally and the posterior surface faces posteromedially. This is because of the oblique arrangement of the axis of kidney. Next we see about the two borders. We have one outer border, that is the lateral border, and one medial border. Lateral border is fully convex in nature, while medial border has near its upper end and its lower end it is convex, and in the middle it presents a hilum, so it is a concave in nature. that is this represent the shape of a bean. So at the center we have the hilum. Hilum is nothing but the open space, that is the present vertical fissure, which is called as the hilum, through which the structures enter and leave the kidney. So while seeing the hilum of the kidney, we can see the arrangement of structures in an orderly manner. Okay, first anteriorly we will see the renal vein, then just posterior to it we can see renal artery, then the ureter, then subsidiary branch of the renal artery, that is one smaller branch. Okay, so this is the arrangement from anterior to posterior: vein, artery, ureter, and subsidiary branch of renal artery. Then we move on to relations. Relations are very important in respect to kidney. So we will discuss it as anterior and posterior relations. See here, we can see different structures present on the anterior surface of the kidney, that is present on the anterior to the kidney. Let's first discuss about the anterior relations of right kidney. So generally we know that above the kidney there is suprarenal gland. So the apical region is occupied by the suprarenal gland. Okay. Next, on the right side of our abdomen we have a very big major organ called as liver. So it occupies major space on the anterior aspect of the kidney on the right side. So we have this entire hepatic region, hepatic area over the kidney, that is liver lies just anterior to the kidney in this area. Next we have the colic area. Here, why is it so big? Because we can see the right colic flexure, that is the ascending colon transforms itself and flexes it towards the formation of transverse colon just anterior to that of this part of kidney. Okay, so this area is related to colon and hence it is called as colic area. Then we have in the lower part we have the intestines just anterior to that of the kidney. So mostly that will be jejunum, so it is called as jejunal area. So these are the relations of right kidney, and also duodenum is present along this area. Since the duodenum passes along the second part of duodenum comes towards the anterior to that of the hilum of the right kidney. Okay, just remember this, second part of duodenum comes near the hilum of the right kidney, just anterior to it. Okay, so these are the anterior relations of right kidney. For the left kidney there are other organs present on the left side. See here, and superiorly in the apical region we have the suprarenal gland, so it belongs to suprarenal area. Then on the lateralmost side of the left side we have the spleen, so this is called a splenic area which occupies a minor portion. Then we have a stomach, so this area is called as gastric area. Below the stomach we have the pancreas, so it has a major big area called as pancreatic area. Then here we have more of jejunal area than the colic area. Colic area comes downwards and jejunal area just lies about it. Why is it so? Because in the transverse colon continues as the descending colon, it produces a splenic flexure, that is the left colic flexure. It's also called splenic flexure. Why is it so? Because it occurs just near the spleen. So here we cannot see the flexure, that is the left colic flexure. So the major area occupied is by the jejunum, and the colon occupies a slight smaller area. So thus the relations of the left kidney is explained. Okay, so these are the anterior relations of both the kidneys. It's very easy to understand, just open your book and read it. Then posterior relations. Usually we know that right kidney is slightly lower than that of the left kidney. So both 11th and 12th ribs, okay, 11th and 12th ribs will come posterior to the kidney, but on the right side it is slightly lower, so that only one rib, that is the 12th rib, will come in posterior relations of the right kidney. Okay. Then we have the diaphragm here covering the upper portion of the posterior aspect, and then below it we have the three muscles. They are the medial most muscle is the psoas major, it is one of the posterior abdominal muscle. Then another muscle is the quadratus lumborum, which is also one of the posterior abdominal muscle. We will learn this in the posterior abdominal wall. Okay. Then transversus abdominis, that is present on the lateral aspect of our body. So these form the muscles. These three muscles along with the diaphragm form the posterior relations. Then we have these two ribs, and also we have some vessels and nerves. Okay, subcostal vessels and nerves will pass from here, and we also have iliohypogastric nerve and ilioinguinal nerve. Okay, these three nerves and subcostal vessels are also found. Okay, these are the posterior relations, and this is the medial arcuate ligament and this is the lateral arcuate ligament, which are one of the origins of diaphragm. So this is the simple posterior relations. Then we move on to the very most important topic, that is the capsules of kidney. It is very frequently asked question. Okay, so listen carefully. From within outwards, that is from inside to the outside, the kidney is covered by fibrous capsule, which is also called as true capsule, perirenal fat, that is a fatty area that is covering that of the capsule. Then renal fascia, that is one type of fascia called as fascia of Gerota, that covers that is forms the next layer, and a pararenal fat, that is a fatty layer. Okay, let's see here. Here we can see the various arrangement of structures present around the kidney. This is the kidney and is surrounded by just a lining of a kidney. Okay, just lining the kidney. See here, this is the renal capsule, that is the true capsule of the kidney. It is formed by the condensation of stroma that is present around the kidney. Okay, usually this lies along the margins of the kidney and is able to peeled off, but during some inflammation of the kidney, the capsule becomes firmly adherent so that it cannot be removed. Okay, this is one of the clinical point. Then we have the perirenal fat, that is present between the true capsule and false capsule. False capsule is the fascia of Gerota. See here, this yellow color structure, that is the fatty layer, which is also called as perirenal fat, just present outer to the kidney, so it is called as perirenal fat. This is very important. Why is it? Because during some diseases, chronic diseases, this fatty layer may get damaged, that is the fat may get loosened up, so that there will be kinking of ureter, that is the fixation of the kidney at its position is altered because of the lowering of the fat present in that area. The ureter can't handle the weight of the kidney, so that there produce a kink in the ureter, obstructing the urine outflow. So this is very important. Next we will see about the fascia of Gerota, that is the green colored structure that covers from here to here, going there, and also here. This is the fascia of Gerota. Fascia of Gerota consists of two layers, anterior layer and a posterior layer. Anterior layer is also called as fascia of Told, and the posterior layer is called as fascia of Zuckerkandl. Okay, then this is not completely surrounding the kidney alone. Okay, it also extends superiorly and inferiorly, and also laterally they are arranged in a different manner. Let's see everything. First, superiorly, it first joins together and then splits to cover the entire suprarenal gland, that is the adrenal gland. Okay, so the both layers fuse together, then split to cover the adrenal gland, and then with also extends till the diaphragmatic fascia. Okay, that's the extent of the fascia of Gerota in the superior aspect. Inferiorly, the two layers separate out. Okay, they don't join, they separate out and enclose the ureter, where the anterior layer is lost in the extraperitoneal tissue of iliac fossa, while posterior layer blends with the fascia iliaca. Fascia iliaca is the fascia that covers the muscle called as iliacus. Okay, so anterior in the extraperitoneal tissue, while the posterior layer blends with that of the fascia posterior layer blends with that of the fascia iliaca. Okay, this is the extent of the fascia of Gerota, which is also called as renal fascia. Okay, but on the medial aspect, the anterior layer just runs anterior to that of the great vessels, that is the inferior vena cava and aorta here. Okay, so it lies anterior to that of this and joins with that of the fascia of Gerota of the opposite side. Okay, so on the medial aspect, it goes anterior to that of the aorta and inferior vena cava to join with that of the opposite side, while posteriorly on the medial aspect, this posterior layer joins with that of the vertebra. Okay, on the lateral aspect, this forms also joins with the fascia transversalis. Okay, It goes and joins with fascia transversalis. So this is the entire covering of the fascia of Gerota. Okay. Thus we have discussed the major things, and here we have the pararenal fat. Here this yellow colored outside the fascia of Gerota. Okay. What is the importance of this pararenal fat? Is that it acts as a cushion in the paravertebral gutter that is present along the vertebra. Okay, paravertebral gutter is a space. Okay, that on that space this pararenal fat is present, and mostly this is located posterior and nearer to the lower pole. Okay, just supports the location of kidneys in the paravertebral gutter. Okay, this is the main function of the pararenal fat. So we have covered the entire capsules, that is the true capsule here, then the perirenal fat, then fascia of Gerota and pararenal fat. Also we saw the kinking of ureter. Now we move on to the microscopic structure, that is the gross structure of the kidney. Okay, so kidney consists of it is classified mainly as kidney proper and renal sinus. Kidney proper consists of renal cortex and renal medulla. Okay, renal cortex is the area that is present on the outer aspect, and renal medulla is the pyramidal structures, that is the arrangement of the pyramidal structures. They are called as pyramids because of the structural arrangement. Then the cortex extends into the medulla. See here, between these pyramids we can see that the cortex extending into the medulla. Okay, this is called as renal columns of Bertini. Okay, we have different names, Bertini and Bellini, so be careful. Here we have the renal columns of Bertini, that is the cortex extending into the medulla. Okay, between the pyramids. Then the renal pyramids may be 5 to 11 in number, and they are the main urine forming areas that we'll see in the microscopic structure. Then another part we saw, no, the renal sinus. Renal sinus is composed of minor calyces, major calyx, renal pelvis, and the blood vessels entering and exiting the renal pelvis, and also the ureter. These all comprise of the renal sinus, that is the space excluding that of the medulla and cortex of the kidney. Okay, these are the macroscopic structures. Also we have the renal pyramids having a nipple like projections into the minor calyces, which are called as renal papilla. Okay, this renal papilla is the one thing that allows the urine produced from the renal pyramids to enter into the minor calyx. So these are the minor calyxes which are joined together to form major calyx, and the major calyxes are joined together to form the ureter. Okay, this is the macroscopic structure of kidney. Then we move on to the microscopic structure. Usually we all know that the nephrons are the structural and functional units of kidney. It consists of a Malpighian corpuscle and a tubular system. Malpighian corpuscle, see, it is named as corpuscle because it is presented. There will be a lot of blood vessels form tuft of capillaries, which is also called as glomerulus. Okay, it is present within the cup-like structure, and it covers the glomerulus widely. So it covers like a capsule, hence it is also called as Bowman's capsule. So Malpighian corpuscle consists of glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. Then from the Bowman's capsule, the urine enters into the tubular system. That is, the urine is not formed, but the filtrate goes into a variety of tubules. They are called as the tubular system, and they include proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct, and loop of Henle. Okay, so these collecting tubules radiate from the renal pyramid into the cortex to form the medullary rays. See, we saw that this is the medulla, and in the medulla we can see that the collecting tubules, right? The collecting tubules extend from the medulla to that of the cortex. Okay, that will collect the urine produced and bring it to that of the major calyx and minor calyxes, and then towards the ureter. So these medullary rays, okay, that run from medulla to the cortex. Many collecting tubules join together within the medulla, that is the renal pyramid. Many collecting tubules join together to form a duct, collecting duct, which is called as duct of Bellini. Okay, renal column of Bertini is present, that is the cortex extending into the medulla, while duct of Bellini, which is the collecting tubules that are joined together. Okay, that form the duct of Bellini, which opens onto the apex of the renal papilla. Okay, this is the main structure of the tubules. Okay, then we have the one important aspect here. Capacity of renal calyces and renal pelvis is just 8 ml. So on injecting some dyes here into the ureter, we should be very careful, as greater than this 8 ml when injected will disrupt the joints of the minor calyx with the renal papilla. Okay, so the structure will get distorted. There should be very careful when injecting the dye into the ureter. That's about the microscopic structure. See here in the histology slide, we can see a variety of tubules here. There are variety of tubules. They are the collecting ducts here within the medulla. More number of collecting ducts are seen, while in the cortex you can see the tubules, that is mostly the proximal distal tubules. And here we can see that of the Malpighian corpuscle, consists of the glomerulus and surrounding by a Bowman's capsule. And this is the blood vessels that entering into the kidney. Next, we are going to see about the one of the most important aspect, and when understood it becomes very easier, that is the blood supply. Usually blood supply includes arterial supply and venous drainage. Here kidney is supplied by the renal artery, which arises from the abdominal aorta at the level of L2 vertebra, and they are paired branches arising on the lateral aspect of abdominal aorta. Okay, abdominal aorta has many branches surrounding itself, so remember lateral branches include the renal arteries. Then see here inferior vena cava, it lies anterior to that of the abdominal aorta and to the right of the abdominal aorta. So because of its anterior arrangement, its vein passes anterior to that of the renal artery. So renal vein passes anterior to that of the renal artery on the both sides. Also we have the right renal artery, which is longer than the left renal artery, because abdominal aorta is present slightly to the left, so that it sends a long course of the right renal artery. That is opposite for the renal veins, as left renal vein is longer, because IVC is present just towards the right. Okay, then this renal artery near the hilum divides into anterior and posterior branches. Okay, then the anterior branch then divide into the segmental branches. See here, these are the anterior and the posterior branches. The anterior branch, both the branches are segmental in nature, that is the supply one of the segments of the kidney. So the anterior branch usually divides into 4. Okay, that supplies the apical, upper, lower and the inferior parts of the inferior lobe segments of the kidney, while the posterior one supplies the posterior aspect of the kidney. It also divides into branches and supplies the posterior aspect of kidney. So these branches are called as segmental branches because they supply the segments of the kidney. Okay, then see, in the segmental branches there is some lobes of the kidney. Lobes are nothing but the consist of the renal pyramids. Okay, so lobes, when they reach the lobes, they are called as lobar artery. Then from the lobar artery they divide into interlobar artery, that is a pass between the two lobes, that is between lobes, hence they are called as interlobar artery, which go and split into the arcuate arteries. See, these arteries are called as arcuate arteries because the arcuate arteries are those that are arch like arrangement, so they are called as arcuate arteries. From the arcuate arteries we will get the interlobular artery, that is passing into different lobules of the kidney, so it is called as interlobular artery. And then the interlobular artery gives rise to that of the glomerulus, that is the afferent arteriole of the glomerulus. So from the beginning saw that first the renal artery near the hilum splits into anterior and posterior divisions, then they divide into segmental branches, like here. See here, they divide into segmental branches, and these segmental branches divide between the lobes to form the lobar artery, and between the lobe they form the interlobar artery, and then they form the arch like structure called as the arcuate artery, And the arches give rise to some branches. They are called as the interlobular artery, and the interlobular artery gives rise to that of the afferent arteriole. So these are the major blood supply from the afferent arteriole. They get converted into they go into the capillary, that is glomerular capillaries. Then from the glomerular capillaries they move on to that of the efferent arterioles, that is going away from the glomerulus, efferent arterioles. Then these efferent arterioles form peritubular capillary plexus. Okay, peritubular capillary plexus. Then they from the capillary plexus they continue as veins. Veins are named similar to that of the arteries. Okay, that is the interlobular vein, arcuate vein, interlobar vein, lobar vein, segmental veins, and then anterior and posterior veins, and unite to form the renal vein. That is similar to that of the arterial supply, but the change is here that from the afferent arteriole they get converted to that of the glomerular capillaries, then efferent arteriole, then peritubular capillary plexus. From the peritubular capillary plexus the venous system starts. So this is the difference you need to know. Thus we covered the entire arterial supply, and here I want to mention something about the vascular segments. So the segmental artery divides. This segmental artery supplies each segment. This segment is divided as apical, upper, middle, and lower, and also posterior segments. Apical consist of the most of the anterior aspect and slightly to the posterior aspect. Okay. Then upper consists of most of the anterior, middle consists of most of the anterior, lower consists of all the lower parts, that is the anterior, lateral, and lower posterior part of the lower pole. Okay. That covers the lower vascular segment, and posterior vascular segment supplies the posterior aspect. So these segmental arteries divide and supply the entire structures. Okay. And here I want to mention that these segmental arteries and also the renal arteries, they are end arteries. End arteries are the arteries that do not anastomose with each other. Okay, so if any damage occurs, that part suffers from acute blood supply, that is a lower blood supply, so that the cells may undergo infarction and die. So there lies a avascular area between these segments, and the area is marked by Brodal's line. Okay, that is present just on the lateral aspect to the in the posterior side. So this is the posterior view. We can see that on the lateral side of the posterior surface, you can see a line. Okay, that is imaginary line called as Brodal's line, which is used while doing any surgery of kidney. While we spare some part of the kidney, okay, for its function to be retained, while only one segment is damaged, so that segment only is removed, and the incision is made along this Brodal's line. Why is it so? Because there will be very less vascular supply since they do not anastomose, so the blood loss will be minimum. Okay, so this Brodal's line is a very important surgical landmark. These are the vascular segments. Venous drainage is by the same type, that is I already discussed it. Okay. The nerve supply and lymphatics. We have separate plexus of nerves called as renal plexus, that is present along the renal artery supply the kidneys. These renal plexuses consist of sympathetic and non-sympathetic fibers, parasympathetic fibers. Sympathetic fibers are derived from T10 to L1, while parasympathetic segments are from the vagus nerve. Okay. So only the sympathetic and parasympathetic supply are given to this kidney. Why is it so? Because we can't control kidney, so it is autonomically controlled. So autonomous nervous system controls it. Autonomous nervous system consists of the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, so only fibers are present in the kidney. Then lymphatics drain into the para-aortic lymph nodes. Since it is present near to the aorta, we have the para-aortic lymph nodes that is present along both the sides of the aorta. So along with the renal artery, the lymphatics go and they drain into the para-aortic lymph nodes. Okay. Usually the lymphatic drainage of visceral organs lie in this manner, that is towards the vascular supply. They have the lymph nodes present along the major vessels, so that they go along the blood vessels and then drain into the lymph nodes present along the major blood vessels. Okay. This is a general rule. it will be applicable to the most of the visceral organs. Then we move on to development of kidney. Development, we have the excretory component and the collecting system. Okay, so first the excretory component, they consist of nephrons. Okay, there's nephrons developed from the metanephric cap. See here, this is the metanephric cap. I will discuss it in the next slide. So this metanephric cap, from here the nephrons develop, and we have the collecting system, which is the ureter. Okay, ureter develops from the mesonephric duct and joins with that of the metanephric cap. The metanephric cap is the primitive kidney, and the ureteric bud is the primitive ureter. So they two join together and form the functional kidney. This is a very basic general idea of how kidney develops. Usually the kidneys develop at the level of pelvis, okay, then ascend to the top of the adult position. Okay, this is because in the primitive stages of development there will be no space for the accommodation of this kidney in the abdominal cavity, as cavity is filled by the visceral organs. So it develops from the pelvis, then ascends towards the adult position, that is towards the abdomen. Okay, so while this process is going on, it should receive its blood supply now. So first it gets its blood supply from the internal iliac artery. Okay, first internal iliac artery supplies the renal arteries. Then while the ascent of kidney takes place, it goes along the course of the aorta, that is branches of the aorta, from the internal iliac artery to the common iliac artery, and then from the common iliac artery to that of the abdominal aorta, then abdominal aorta to that of the renal artery of the adult. Okay, that is a position. I am telling about the position, not the arteries. The renal artery arises from these structures. And then after the development of adult position of the renal artery, other arteries obliterate. That is, they will get non-functional. Okay, so these arteries only function. This is the development in a shorter aspect. Now let's see something in detail. Usually the kidney develops as 3 stages: pronephros, mesonephros, and metanephros. Of this, the metanephros forms the major kidney, that is the adult kidney. Okay, pronephros, it is present nearly in the formation of the excretory system of kidney. Okay, that is in the primitive embryo. That is when the embryo is formed, and the initial stages it forms the pronephros. Okay, the pronephros will get its blood supply, and they will collect the urine. This is the mesonephric duct. So the collecting ducts will collect it and process it from the pronephros. Pronephros is the primitive most kidney. Then pronephros will get degenerated, and mesonephros will take place. Okay, that is in the middle stages. And towards the terminal stages, these mesonephros too get degenerated, and metanephros takes place. Metanephros, these are the mesenchymal cells that are present near the posterior abdominal wall. They form the kidney. Okay, so the metanephros is present near the pelvic region, and ureteric bud develops from that of the this is the mesonephric duct. So metanephric cap is developed from metanephros. Okay, that is a mesenchyme from the posterior abdominal wall. First it arises as a pronephros, this is the primitive kidney, then it forms the mesonephros, then we have the metanephros. So from the metanephros we will develop the kidney, and the kidney will emerge here and then go towards the abdominal cavity. Okay, this is the development of kidney. And here you can see the mesonephric duct. That is usually the collecting tubule that excretes a collected fluid, and which sends here the ureteric bud to the major forming, that is the metanephric cap. So ureteric bud joins with the metanephric cap to form these structures. Usually the collecting takes them till the minor calyces. Okay, the minor calyces in junction with the renal papilla. We saw that in the macroscopic structure, right? So till the minor calyces, from the ureter till the minor calyces, that is the ureter, major calyces, minor calyces. These full structures are formed by this ureteric bud, while the cortex, medulla till the renal papillae is formed by that of the metanephric cap, that is the metanephros. So on the fusion of the metanephros with the ureteric bud here this stage, At this stage only, the renal papilla pierces into the minor calyxes, so that this fluid goes from renal papilla into the, that is the renal pyramids, into the collecting system. Okay, so this is the development of kidney. I told it in a very short aspect. You take your embryology textbook and read it, and you get a complete knowledge. Okay, then we move on to the last part of our lecture, that is the clinical correlation. Here we can see a variety of defects such as the congenital anomalies that are present before birth, that is abnormalities that is developed before birth. Okay, then renal and ureteric calculi, that is the renal stones and ureteric stones. Okay, these stones are mainly formed of calcium phosphate oxalates. Okay, they form insoluble salts and develop into crystals, which develop into stones, and they obstruct the path of urine outflow, so that the area will get damaged, and also they will cause a variation in pH, that is the acidity may increase. Okay, which will lead to more deposition of stones. So it's a very serious condition, and the stones should be removed surgically. Then renal colic. Renal colic is the pain. Okay, occurs due to stone in the kidney, that is the renal calculi, which causes the renal colic. So this renal colic extends from the loin to the groin. Loin is the area behind the flank, and groin is the area where the inguinal region is present. Okay, here the pain is caused because afferent fibers pass through the renal plexus and then lowers the splanchnic nerves, that is the sympathetic outflow, then reach the sympathetic trunk and gives its efference to T12, that is the subcostal nerve, and also into the ilioinguinal nerve. Okay, so that these regions are supplied by this area, these two nerves, that is the ilioinguinal nerve and this subcostal nerve. Okay, so this pain is elicited in this area. Also, we have an important sign called as Murphy's punch sign. Okay, it is a test usually done to predict any renal abscess or renal stone. Renal abscess is the collection of pus in the renal cavity, that is the surrounding the kidney. Okay, here the pain is felt by tapping the renal angle during inspiration. Okay, then when the patient feels a pain during inspiration on tapping the renal angle, this there will be positive Murphy's sign, which indicates that there will be any defect such as the perinephric abscess or renal stones. Okay, renal angle is the angle present between the lower border of 12th rib and the outer border of erector spine. So this is the renal angle from that when that area is tapped during inspiration, when the patient feels any pain, this is called positive Murphy's punch sign. This is somewhat important. Then floating kidney. Floating kidney is that perirenal fat and the renal fascia usually keep the kidney in its position. When the fat is reduced, we already saw that when the perirenal fat is reduced, it causes the kinking of ureter, but it also sometimes causes the loss of position of the kidney within its regular position, so that the kidney floats along and stretches widely. Okay, that is floats, goes upwards and downwards along with the respiration, and also in a fast manner without any control. So it causes the kinking of ureter and also it obstructs the urine outflow. In renal trauma, it is the usually kidneys are protected by lower ribs, that is the 11th and the 12th rib, but when any blunt injury occurs severely, the kidney is damaged. Also, it is usually done by the penetrating wounds such as the gunshot wounds. Okay, so in these conditions the kidney may go into acute kidney injury, and it should be treated successively. Then one most important point is the transplantation of the kidney, which is usually done when the patient with a end stage renal failure. Okay, so the donor kidney is placed retroperitoneally, that is behind the peritoneum in the iliac fossa, with the hilum parallel to that of the external iliac vessels. Okay, So external iliac vessels is paired with that of the hilum of donor kidney that is placed in the pelvic cavity. So in this process, the failed kidney is not removed. Only the new kidney is kept in the position, and blood supply is ensured to it with the arterial venous supply is given to the new kidney, that is the donor kidney. Okay, and the old kidney is not removed. So this is the process of transplantation of kidney. Here in the congenital anomalies, we can see that lobulated kidney, that is the presence of fetal lobules that is present in the adult kidney, but it has no clinical significance. That is, does not cause any normal impairment to the function of the kidney. Also, we have aberrant kidney. Aberrant kidney is that, as we saw that during the ascent of kidney from the pelvic cavity to the abdominal cavity, we saw many arteries originate and degrade. Okay, so on reaching the adult position, when any of these arteries does not get obliterated, it results in aberrant kidney. That is, the kidney will have additional blood supply from that of the fetal artery. Okay, this is the aberrant kidney. Then we have the polycystic kidney. In the polycystic kidney, these nephrons and the collecting tubules fail to join. Okay, so as a result, the fluid accumulates within the nephrons, and these nephrons will form to the cystic masses. That is, here you can see this cyst are the fluid filled spaces, that is a fluid filled cavity, that is called as a cyst. Okay, so we can see that many of the nephrons form the cyst, and it is many since there are many cysts, it is called as polycystic kidney. Okay. And thus if not treated, it will go into the renal failure, because the nephrons, once damaged, cannot be revived. Okay, then we have horseshoe kidney. Horseshoe kidney, it occurs due to the fusion of the lower poles of the kidneys. Here the lower poles of the kidneys fuse, it forms a horseshoe kidney. Why it is called as so? Because the shape of the kidney, the shape is the horseshoe shape, so that it is called as horseshoe kidney. And when the lower poles are joined, they form the isthmus of the horseshoe kidney, that is the joining portion. Okay. When it lies just below of the inferior mesenteric artery origin, which is along the L3 vertebra, during respiration, usually the kidney moves up and down, but when the isthmus lies just below this inferior mesenteric artery, it cannot move up and down in this abdominal cavity, so that function is altered, and it is overstretched, ureters are overstretched. Then renal agenesis. Usually we should not think that a person has always two kidneys. Some may be born with only one single kidney, and the other kidney may get degenerated before birth itself. This is called as renal agenesis. Okay. So during nephrectomy, that is the removal of a part of kidney or removal of a kidney, one should be aware that to check that the person has both the kidneys, so that one kidney can be removed, it will not be life threatening. So it is always mandatory to check both the kidneys before any nephrectomy. These are the congenital anomalies. So for summary, we saw about the external features, that is the poles, surfaces, hilum, and borders. Then capsules. Capsule consists of mainly 4 capsules, which is a very important part in this entire kidney. They are the true capsule, perirenal fat, false capsule or fascia of Gerota, and pararenal fat. Then we saw about the macroscopic structures and microscopic structures. Also we saw about the blood supply, which is also important, because arteries go into the form branches, that is mainly anterior and posterior, then go into segmental branches, then to lobar branches, then these lobar branches give rise to that of the interlobar branches. Interlobar branches form the arcuate arteries. Arcuate arteries give rise to interlobular arteries, and they give rise to the afferent arteriole, which go into the glomerulus, then come out as the efferent arteriole, form peritubular capillary plexus, then forms the veins, and the veins are along the reversal of the arteries, that is from these capillary veins go into the interlobular, that is the interlobular veins, then to the arcuate veins, then to the
interlobar veins, then into the lobar veins, then into the segmental veins, and then into the anterior and the posterior veins, and the unit to form the renal vein, and they drain into the inferior vena cava. So this is the blood supply, you should remember. Then we saw about embryology. You should read it in the books to make it thorough today itself. Okay. Then we saw about the clinicals. So thus we are completing the kidney. Thank you.